Hey, Dave here, and I will be your resident nerdarchist tonight. And yeah, I wanted to tell you about a game I've been playing. My group, we've been playing it for the last couple years, and before that, we were pretty much hardcore D&Ders, and fourth edition, and 3.5 to fourth edition, and then one of our friends, talked about doing a supers game with Palladium. So, I sounded like fun, and my actual first experience with playing in a supers game was the original TSR Marvel Phase Rip, and it was a lot of fun, and I used to love that game. It was so it was back in like my teenage years, so it just like brought me way back. So the idea of playing a supers game was really exciting to me, and I was glad to have someone run it because that system isn't around anymore. And so he's been using Palladium. So he grabbed the Palladium books, and we wrote up some characters, and and we started playing. And we had a decent sized group. There was like 5 or 6 of us in the game, and it was a lot of fun, and there's a lot of great things about it. But our DM was doing a really good job, and he put together some great plots, and we had fun characters. But there was one little thing that really bugged me. Originally I had this like concept for this android character, and I just couldn't pull it off with the system because the powers are kind of wonky, and like they're all like prefabbed, like they do specific things or a group of things, and if you're familiar with that system, so I couldn't just quite get it the way I wanted to. So I was flipping through and I was looking, and I was like, I did a combination of random rolling my character and picking, and there's this one power where you're like the ultimate martial artist, like every kind of like fighting style there is. You can and it's not just martial arts either. It's not just hand-to-hand combat. It's any kind of fighting. You can pick up any weapon. You just know how to use it. So I was like, wow, that's really cool. And I gave him like a healing factor and heightened senses. So he was kind of like kind of like a tracker and a more animalistic character, like kind of like Wolverine, except for he uses shotguns and stuff, and no claws. So so I codenamed him Grizzly, and then we start playing, right? Well, my brother's in the same game. You'll probably see him on one of these videos with me or by himself, and he comes up with a concept for a character, right? And he's like, in his mind, he envisions, right? Get this, he pictures, like the panels in a comic book page, right? And the narration, we have our young blacksmith, right? And in the panel, there's a guy with the hammer and the anvil smashing away, building stuff, right? Making weapons or horseshoes or whatever, right? And then it's like, then it goes, oh no, not that kind of blacksmith. Instead, then it pans to like a young black man in a hoodie, who is black and a smith, and is and I forget what his first name was. So the concept for his character is he's a professional boxer or semi-pro boxer, and he's doing really well. But he's on a private flight somewhere. So his next fight or wherever, and the plane gets struck by lightning or some kind of mysterious beam, and it goes down. And there's only 2 things on that plane that survive: Mr. Smith, and the black box. Right. So from that time on, his character. First of all, you gotta understand. Like the concept for his character, you've probably seen if you're a comic book geek and you're into superhero stuff, you've probably seen the I'm the Juggernaut bitch bit, right? So he fucking makes his character based off of that bit, I'm the Juggernaut bitch, right? And he names him the Anvil. He's a density shifter, so he's like super strong and super tough, and he can increase his mass. So before he becomes a superhero, he goes back to boxing. Well, so he's kind of cheating in the matches. He uses just enough of his power so he can win. It makes him tougher. He hits harder. They can't hurt him. So he's really successful, and so his secret identity is that he's a professional boxer, and then his superhero identity is as the Anvil, and the Anvil, he's a little on the gray side, he's a little shifty, so now he wouldn't mug you or steal your wallet, but if you left it on the table, the money might not be there when you came back. It's just the way the Anvil rolled, and it was kind of funny. His character was like, he was talking about wearing his air anvils, from having a sneaker deal, and wouldn't have an entourage follow him around, like a rapper, or something. And so it was kind of crazy, which is a cool concept, right? Every good superhero team needs a brick, and that was our brick. He was a solid one. Drove the DM nuts. The funny thing is, the Anvil couldn't go like 30 seconds without dropping an F-bomb. It was motherfucking Anvil this, motherfucking Anvil that, you bitches, that's just how the Anvil talked. That's just how it was, It drove our DM nuts, right? Because he definitely was not, he may have been a superhero, but he was not a role model, let me tell you that much. And so that was cool. And then we got this other guy, right? I think the character's name was Blastback. And he's a freaking alien that can teleport. And he's basically got like a mech, So, he's got this, giant armor he wears. Not like Transor Z Voltron mech, but he's still bigger than normal, which is kind of crazy. Now remember, right? And then you still have my character, right? He's got a little heightened senses, a little bit of a healing factor. He's no Wolverine, that's for sure. And he can fight with anything, whether put anything in his hands, it's a weapon. Any kind of weapon, he just instinctively knows how to use it. He knows any kind of fighting system there is. That's just his power, right? But so he's got to roll out with the Anvil, who's pretty much invulnerable to damage and can throw freaking buses around. And he's got to roll with this freaking alien from space that's got a battle suit and can teleport, and he shoots laser beams and crap like that, right? And then we got an insane killer clown. Yeah, that's one of our heroes. And literally, like, the authorities of this world let him out of prison to help with this task force. And, his name was Needles something. But he had a souped up ice cream truck that was, like, armored and it had weapons. And this clown would eat anything. Like, you like, concrete, steel, it didn't matter. He would eat his way through it. Nothing seemed to hurt him permanently. And he always produced weapons from, nowhere. It was crazy. Guns, rocket launchers, knives. It's just like the clown was always always armed and very disturbing, right? So my guy next to that guy is kind of like normal and regular. And he's got to work with the sociopath. Pardon me, who's basically a freaking, reminds me of the freaking killer clowns from outer space. So my guy's all fucking freaked out because he's got to work with a real alien and then the killer clowns from outer space. And then he's got, the friggin' anvil that, he's kind of like Thug Light. But it's all good. And then we got this other guy. I forget his name, but he was like a cyborg. And he's like a part cyborg and military. And, he had the Captain America shield thing going on. And, he had some blasting powers. He was kind of normal, And then we had Flood, right? The guy was friggin' water, basically Hydro Man from Spider-Man, right? So nothing could really hurt him. He could friggin' drown shit. And it's water. You ever try shooting or punching water? What happens? Nothing. Splash. Alright? And then there's the next character, right? Helio. He basically turns himself into an energy form, plasma. Nothing can hurt him. Everything just either goes through him or it just doesn't do anything to him. Can't hurt him. He can shoot plasma blasts that, basically eat holes through metal. Like it was freaking paper. You can't even, if you touch him, you start burning and catch on fire. It's crazy, right? So, a lot of the characters are kind of rolled up randomly, or the DM was kind of cool, like if or a game master, referee, whatever you want to call him. But he was kind of cool. He'd let us mix and match a little bit, and as long as you weren't going too crazy with stuff, and you could come up with some cool ideas for story and actually incorporate a little bit of role playing in there. So I'm looking at our roster, right? And of all these guys, I'm like the normal guy, almost. One of our first fights is against. Sorry about that stupid battery pack for my for the phone. It's through Fios or whatever, but the battery's dead, so it beeps and it'll probably be annoying us through this. But my guy is like almost normal. He's kind of like Wolverine light, but not really, and like the Punisher. Which don't get me wrong, the freaking Punisher is badass and Wolverine's cool and all, but when you're basically standing next to the freaking Juggernaut, and Mister, I melt your face if you get too close to me. He's kind of a chump because like I said, in the Palladium system, it's all kind of random. So this got me thinking. I was actually a little pissed off, to be honest with you. I'm like, there's got to be something better. Like, there's like no balance. It's so like, here and there and unbalanced. It wasn't fair. My character sucked next to the rest of them, so it wasn't fair, right? Because of it just didn't make sense, and like I'm very atypical and logical, and I'm like, it's gotta jive better. It's gotta gel better than that. There's gotta be something better. I knew it. I knew there was something better. So I started poking around, and I see champions and like I even found like some stuff to download on the old the Marvel Phase Rip system that isn't around anymore, and I even considered using that. But that was kind of like watered down and weak, But I because it was like kind of like nostalgia for me. So I keep poking around. I see champions and a lot of people like that, and I never really got a chance to look at that. But what I found was Mutants and Masterminds. Fucking love it. Fucking love it, right? So the DM, right? We got this love-hate relationship. We go way back, and we have different opinions on sometimes. So sometimes it's a little bit like this, but yeah, we're good, right? So I go out and I get the books. I start looking at this stuff, and I go, yo, you guys should look at this. And he looks at it begrudgingly, and I know he doesn't want to like it, because I brought it to the table, and I'm kind of dissing on Palladium, because it just, I don't know, maybe some of you guys love Palladium, but for me, yeah, it wasn't for me. Next to Mutants and Masterminds, now that's a friggin' awesome game, because the game balance is so well constructed, and this is the second edition we started with, and it's a D20 system, so we're all pretty comfortable with that. We all come from like a D&D background, Dungeons and Dragons. We had just finished up with 3.5 and started playing the 4th edition, which there were some good things with 4th edition that I liked, but there was things I didn't like either. Now, if you're used to that kind of game, you got to know Mutants and Masterminds is not. It's not a tactical game like 3.5 is. You're not moving you're not moving miniatures around the board or nothing, because let's face it, you could have a character that could like teleport out of the freaking galaxy or travel through dimensions, or you could literally have a Flash character that could literally circle the globe, hit somebody, and then circle the globe again. So it gets kind of crazy like that. So a battle map becomes kind of useless at that point. So it's actually for some of you older folks out there, right, like myself, who's actually cut their teeth on D&D, the red box, and then Advanced Dungeons and Dragons, it's more like that, where it's more free form. There's not a tax of opportunity, and it's less tactical. So it still works out fine. There's still lots of opportunity, especially if you like role playing stuff. The battles are still pretty climatic, even without the miniatures. So you just kind of describe it, and without the tactical features like tax of opportunity and stuff like that, it doesn't matter. I know some people they don't like that, so that system would be really tough for you to get into. But if you can get past that and you don't care about that, it's really cool because the way it works is your game master picks a power level, right? And in that power level, everyone has a certain amount of points to build their character. There's no random dice rolling in it. So you just kind of build your character how you want, and you build the powers. It's an effect-based system. The powers are not pre-made. You actually build them and make them. There's like flaws and drawbacks that you can put on top of your powers in order to tailor them and change them a little bit. And because it's effect-based system, it doesn't matter, right? If you have a damage power, right? It's just a strike power, and then you decide what it is, whether you're hitting them with a sword or you're using a pair of claws, or you have an energy touch. It doesn't matter. It just that would determine your descriptor. So if you have a plasma form and you can touch people and do damage, then you'd probably do like heat damage or laser damage or fire damage or radiation damage. So it's really it's cool that way because you can literally create anything you can think of. Can it be unbalanced and be broken? Absolutely. If the DM lets you go crazy and wild with stuff, yeah, it can get a little out of control. But at the end of the day, you still only have X amount of points to work with, just like everybody else in the game. And you might have less points, like if you're fighting street level crime, or you might have more points if you're like a cosmic hero, like the Silver Surfer or Green Lantern or something like that. So there's a lot of room for creating the character that you want, and that's what I really like about it. You only use one die, the D20, that's it. And we've been playing Mutants and Masterminds for the last couple years now, and it completely. One of the things I love about the system is it's classless. You don't have classes and races per se. They're just adjective descriptors you use to put on your character. They don't mean anything in game terms. So you're not limited. Like now, I haven't played a D&D game in so long. It would be really hard for me to go back to that type of system because I like building the character I want to have and not having a class. We've used this system and run fantasy games. We've used it and run an actual urban side. What is it considered? Urban fantasy, dark urban fantasy. Basically, we took Jim Butcher's Dresden Files, and one of the guys ran a game from based in that world with the system. So it's really versatile, and that's one of the things I love about it. We just switched over to the 3rd edition version, which it's not really a lot different than the 2nd edition. Like they clean up some of the skills. What they did, if anything, they moved away from Dungeons and Dragons more. It's still a D20 system, but some of the old things, like the stats, everyone knows strength, dex, con, intelligence, wisdom, charisma from, D&D and a lot of them. Well, they just changed they changed the names of those stats, and they got rid of the 3 to 18, well, it's a superhero game, so it can go much higher than that. But, instead that you just use the modifier. So, in D&D you would have a 24 strength, which is a +7 modifier, right? Well, they just got rid of the 24. You have your strength is rank 7, which is kind of cool. They condensed some of the skills down, like they did from 3rd to 4th, which made sense to me. I think Pathfinder did the same thing. Some things, definitely when D&D moved forward, some of the changes were really good. I know a lot of people really hate 4th edition, and I think they're already working on 5th, right? They're calling it D&D Next or whatever, so I don't even know if I'll look at that. For me now, it's hard to look at anything other than Mutants and Masterminds. I love playing in that system. Now, like some of our group, like my one buddy, the one thing he doesn't like is, it's not damaged the way it happens in D&D. You don't have hit points. You have a toughness rank, and what happens is as you take damage, your toughness rank begins to erode and gets weaker and weaker, which affects, which ultimately starts affecting your ability to resist further damage until you finally get knocked out or killed or whatever. And when you've been playing D&D all your life and you're used to rolling damage, you're like, oh, I got a crit. Take that 57 points of damage, Well, it's not like that anymore, or in this system. It's your, take a -1 to your toughness. You're staggered, you're stunned. So, it requires a little bit more work on the DM, I think, to really add flavor to the combats and make it more exciting, So it's not just, -1, stun. These days, where there's definitely something visceral to having a hit point total and having it whittled down, or friggin' getting totally fucked with one shot. Boom, you're like down to 0, right? And now you're in the negatives and dying. Yeah, so I definitely get that. So that's the only shift that was a little bit tough even for me. But when I weigh the pros and the cons, Mutants and Masterminds, it's just a superior game, in my opinion, and just the mechanics and the way it flows, and as a gamer, I love building the characters. I'm all about creating my character and writing his backstory and building it all out. Well, in most systems, you don't really have a lot of options. You're just starting out, so you can pick this and pick that, and then before you know it, you're done. And a lot of times there's just not that much difference. Like, if you're playing a fighter, between you and the other fighter in the party, there isn't really all that much difference. Maybe you guys are different races and you fight with a different weapon. Your skill sets tend to be really close and the same. Where here, you can actually build 2 different characters with the same exact powers and skills, and yet they're completely different because of the way you apply their descriptors, and the flavor of the character can be completely different. I'm running a campaign now, and I said there was no random rolling for characters like in other systems. Well, one of the things they introduced in 3rd edition was in their DM kit. They have a random character generator, and by far it's one of the best I've ever seen, because there's some room for getting wonky results on there, but for the most part, they build a solid character. And one of the things I marvel at is the fact that I had my players for the game we're playing now do random characters. It was just something different. I thought it'd be interesting, right? So I have them all grab their fucking dice and see what they get. And it's kind of funny because fucking 4 out of the 5 players came up with equipment-based characters. All right, we got a guy that's friggin' like Batman, the Shadow, throwing his. He's got an attack copter, a motorcycle, speedboat, and then he's got the utility belt and the glider wings for a cape, and the grapple gun. Really the characters, and he's a detective, so it's basically modeled off of the they call it a crime fighter in here, but the Batman type character. He's got a kick-ass headquarters, right? So that character, right, essentially is using skills, is all about skills and his equipment. That's what he's got going on for him. We had another guy come up with what's called a gadgeteer, right? So he also uses equipment, but it's more like high tech stuff, like ray guns and anti-gravity belts and stuff like that. Well, he developed a speedster character, who uses gravitational pull to enhance his character, and that character's like super smart. Then we got another guy that's a weapon master, and he actually is a weapon designer, weapon builder, and he's an archer who's went through like a super soldier program. So he's got like enhanced physical attributes. He's got like a real low level healing factor. He's really fast for a human. Not speedster fast, but fast. He could run like 60 miles an hour. And then you got we got a straight up, your Iron Man type character, a battlesuit guy, who, his movement power is teleport, and then his system has like a weapons array, almost like the Iron Man armor, So that's 4 different characters, right? They actually were built off of 4 different archetypes. They still ended up being equipment-based characters, and it was done randomly. So I just thought it was kind of cool. It worked that way. And then we have, my son just started playing with us. He just turned 13, and he wanted to be a purple gorilla, and he wanted to be an alien, right? So he rolls the powerhouse. So he's like a little gorilla because he made him like 5'8", like a couple hundred, 2.5, maybe 250 pounds or whatever. But he's a powerhouse, so he's super strong. Can literally pick up tons by the tens. Pick up a bus, slam you with it. He can fly. He's got like an energy attack, and he's just really durable. So I've dubbed them Kid Gorilla and the Super Tech Force. Although that's not really their quote unquote superhero team name. They don't have one. But for my DM and notes and stuff, because I just think it's kind of funny. But I don't even know where I was going with that. But the point is, like, even though those characters are so they're so diverse, they're all built off the same point system. So they're all pretty much are equal. They have different strengths, different weaknesses, and I know one of the things I was getting at is the fact that one of the things I noticed that the characters built by this generator, the random generator, is actually more balanced than most of the characters I've seen built when they just build them ad hoc as they want them. Because always you'll see characters leave off their will defense and their fortitude defense and put the points somewhere else. Where here, like, everything is kind of like matched up, kind of balanced out. You have to understand the system and take a look at the system to really know what I'm talking about, which I highly recommend. I love playing it. Green Ronin puts it out. They've done a great job with the Mutants and Masterminds. I felt really good about going from Mutants and Masterminds 2nd edition to 3rd edition. It was a really smooth transition. It felt like the changes they made really did feel intuitive. Whereas, like, when you went from 3.5 with Dungeons and Dragons to 4th edition, it really seemed like they were trying to really, push it. And they were really trying to go after what was popular. And like, some of their arguments, I got it. You know what? They started using the terms of striker, the tank, and the controller. And, like in online video games, right? And I know people are like, oh, if I wanted to play a video, I would just play a video game. But, and they used the argument that, the video games actually got the roles from Dungeons and Dragons. And it's true, because, even back in the day, you had to have your rogue, sneaky character who can find and disarm your traps. You needed your wizards for blasting, and you needed your cleric for your healing, and you needed the meat shields in front, to soak up damage and womp on things. So, that part didn't bother me so much. But, some of the other changes, and they really did get even deeper into the tactical part of the game than 3.5 was even another step into it, like where everything was minis and tiles and stuff like that, and attacks of opportunity, and which that can be fun, and I like strategy and stuff like that. But after a while, I got the point people were making where it's almost like they're turning it into a board game, and really we're here to role play, and those people make that argument that it takes away from the role playing. I won't go that far because I don't think that actually matters. The mechanics of the games are, in my opinion, is irrelevant when it comes to actually freaking role playing and and getting into the role of the character. But that being said, 3rd edition and 2nd edition Mutants Mastermind, really what they did is they took away all that D&D baggage and just chuck it, get the fuck out of here, boom, gone, right? Because it's true, and it didn't need it, and it felt better, the stats. They changed the stats, which I actually like that. I like the way they do it. Why do you need a 20 and have a +5? It's stupid, right? It's just rank 5. It just makes more sense. It just cuts out the middleman. It's a little tough in the beginning to get used to it because in my mind, I'm always converting back because I just played D&D for so long. But so your stats now are strength, stamina, agility, dexterity, fighting, intellect, awareness, and presence. And they actually added they added a couple stats. They added the fighting stat, and they split up which used to be just dexterity. They split it up into dexterity and agility. So, which I'm okay with it, because some people do make the argument, and I've seen it, where some people have really good hand and eye coordination, but their gross movements, they're very clumsy. So it kind of makes sense. Or they also split up the fences where you have dodge and parry, and dodge is your ability to move out of the way when people are shooting at you, or the resist area effect powers, where parry is your ability to duke it out and block attacks and get out of the way up close. And that makes sense too, because a big hulking wrestler, right, or mixed martial artist who's just a total bruiser, right, he might be good at blocking attacks and moving out of the way and making someone miss him close in. But he may suck with people shooting at him and fire at him from a distance because he's too big and he can't move his whole body fast enough to get out of the way. So, so I kind of like that split. It feels good. And then they did things like, spot and listen became perception, just like they did in 3.5, the 4th edition. Stuff like that just made sense. There wasn't any need. And then they got rid of some rules that were like way broken and overcomplicated, like grappling. I'm not pointing any fingers at you grappling, but yeah, grappling used to be crazy. You have a grappler and you took all the feats and certain powers, and all of a sudden, like you're done. That guy got a hold of you. Forget about it. Game over. So they cleaned up some stuff like that. So it really does feel good. And then the other thing that they did with 3rd edition, which was freaking awesome, is this is probably what really pushed them to move from 2nd to 3rd too, is they got the licensing deal from DC. DC was coming up on, I don't know which anniversary, if it was 50th anniversary or 75 or whatever it was, a million, who knows, I don't remember. But they came up on their anniversary, and they wanted to do something special, and they're really blitzing all the media. So they had the DC Online, the stuff they're doing in the comics with the 52, and they wanted a role-playing game. So what they did is, I don't know if Green Ronin approached them or they approached Green Ronin, but they wanted a role-playing game, and they didn't want to actually do it. So it was really smart, because they took a superhero role-playing game that's already got a good following, it's doing really well, and said, hey, we'll give you 4 books. So they did a player's handbook, the Heroes and Villains 1 and 2, right, and the DC Universe book. And it's I don't have them down here; they're upstairs, and I wish I did to show you. But it was a really smart move on DC's part, because they already had a market to tap in, and I think that really prompted Green Ronin to push from 2nd to 3rd edition with their Mutants and Masterminds. And they had a really good reason to do it. Come on, you're a comic book nerd like me, a superhero nerd like me, and all of a sudden one of the big two are putting out a role playing game with a tried and true system. That's badass. I honestly, we just started playing 3rd edition. We're not playing DC. I'm just using a homebrew. But I don't even care because I like just having the character statted out and be able to look at it and read it and just geek out on it. And then if I want to drop Deathstroke the Terminator in my campaign, that's it. It's on. Those guys are fucked because he's Deathstroke the Terminator, right? But Me personally, when I was growing up, it's funny because when I was growing up, I always read Marvel, and like maybe I read like two DC titles. I think Deathstroke the Terminator. Like this is back in the '80s, early '90s, and I read the Demon, right, and everything else was like all the X titles and Alpha Flight and Moon Knight and Daredevil, Wolverine and Punisher and all that stuff. So now that I'm older, though, what I found happening is now the animated stuff that DC's been putting out, in my opinion, totally smokes Marvel. And you're talking about a Marvel fan, right? But I like their Justice League Unlimited. I love that. I've watched that several times, and I love the Justice League Unlimited, especially when they do like the B-lister characters, because the writing was so strong and the stories were so good. It really added a human element to it. So, as I'm older now, what I find that happens is I don't collect comic books anymore like I used to. So, a lot of times what I'll do is, I'll just pick up graphic novels, and like twice a year I pick up a stack of graphic novels and just read them until they're done. Because I guess up until my early 20s I was reading comics, and I had to give it up. Because at some point, I just looked at the stack of comics that I was walking out of there with, right? I was like 23, 22. And I just forked over my money. And, what is it? They publish twice a week. There's two different dates, different titles come out, I think it was. And so I'd be at the comic book store like every week picking up comics. And literally, it got to the point I was like, oh my God, I should become a crackhead, because I think it would be less expensive for me to smoke crack than it is for me to read comic books. And so I kind of just phased it out. Over the years, I've always gamed and I always role played. Even when we kind of have taken breaks or whatever, as you get older, it's just hard to get together. It's hard to have a DM who's committed to writing the material, to have your players get together and game. And then for, 5-6 people to free up schedule. I mean, we're all, we're all old now. We're married. We got kids. It's not easy like it used to be. So, anymore, I try and get in once a month, and it's just not enough. Start twitching like a crackhead. But that's all I got, guys. You have a great day. Dave Bryant, thanks for checking me out. If you like what you hear, come back. We'll get some more. Subscribe, hit the like, leave some comments. If you think I'm a douchebag, write that down. You can write that in the comment section too. Thanks.